What's up, hobby friends, and welcome back to Paint Bravely, the podcast where you can find a little bit of encouragement, discover new ways to make your hobby more fun, and most importantly, learn to paint bravely. And this week, we are actually talking about paint on Paint Bravely. We're going to get into all sorts of paints. What kind of paints?
It's about time.
I know, right? I don't think we've ever talked about paint. I mean, you know, occasionally.
We get there eventually.
Yeah, eventually. Like, we do talk about painting miniatures and paints that we use, but not so in depth, I think.
No.
Yeah. But before we get to that, we want to do some hobby updates. So we want to talk about what we've been up to, doing hobby, that kind of thing. So Brent, what have you been up to in the last few weeks?
Well, Casey, I've been staying up to date on a very important project of mine, and that is cutting up all of my empty sprues. I've been staying on top of that.
That's
you
good.
Empty out a sprue, it's all done. You do what you gotta do. You cut that up into tiny little tic-tac sized pieces of plastic, and you put it in a box. And one of those days, you're gonna figure out something to do with it. But you gotta condense down that pile of trash so that it's not too big and staring you in the face. So.
Yeah.
You know, last podcast, I was clipping models out of sprues, building models. This time around, I can safely say that I have cut up all those sprues, plus all the other sprues that were piling up around here, mowing that lawn, getting back down to it. So it's been a pretty good, productive hobby time for me.
That's good. I mean,
and I've been painting lizards.
Yeah, lizards.
I've been painting lizards.
The lizard saga continues.
Yeah, so we had that sweet game in Philadelphia, and I've been putting together a couple of videos for that. I realized I need some really nice pictures of those lizards for thumbnails.
Oh, yeah.
And I got in and I zoomed in on some of those lizards, and they look good in a squad, but you start just getting one of them really big on a thumbnail.
Yeah.
We could make some improvements here. We can make this look better. I want people to click on this lizard thumbnail, so we gotta make it look nice. So just revisiting a project that I'd put down a couple of weeks ago, and it's kind of nice to come at it rested, fresh, and ready to look at it with new eyes and make some improvements. Yeah,
that's good. I like that. And cutting up those sprues too, have you moved on from the single box that you have? Have you decided to put it into a document style box, or a round edge is fine for this type of application?
Round edges are fine for a giant pile of gray sprues.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But you're not planning on stacking them quite yet. Still one box.
No, just the one big box at the moment.
That's pretty amazing when you think about like how many boxes you had previously, and now it's all condensed into like a Lego pile. You know,
the sheer efficiency that you can maintain with your pile of trash is really something. It's really something. Yeah.
Man, every single week that I hobby, like, I don't know what it is, but I create and accumulate trash. Like, I honestly, I don't know where it all comes from. Like, all of a sudden, I've filled an entire trash can. And it's like, I'm just in this room by myself. Where did this all come from? I mean, it is amazing how much, like, actual waste there is. I mean, a lot of it's, like, paper towels, especially if doing, like, 3D printing. I go through, like, gloves. Just like, Tic Tacs, you know, but it just, every single time I have to clean up my hobby space, it amazes me how much I actually have to clean up. I don't know if you have that problem.
I try to be as efficient and reduce, reuse, recycle whenever I can. So, for example, the paper towels that I use when I'm painting and cleaning my brushes off, once those really get gummed up with paint, kind of put those aside. And now that's the paper towel I use to pick up cat puke when Gordon eats too fast. And so really I try to get as much use as I can out of all our disposables so that, I'm not losing sleep about it.
That's fair.
I got a system, man. I got a system.
It's a good system, yeah.
A whole system going here.
Oh, man. Now, since you mentioned the cat puke thing, I should probably mention that I have used, some of the paper towels to clean up some of the lizard goo left around, but I am happy to report that my workshop is in fact lizard free. As of, at least I think it is. I'm pretty sure.
This workplace has been lizard-free
for
4 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'll have to make a sign. That's actually a great idea. Unfortunately, though, I was sitting here at this desk that we're recording at right now, and I turned around to like check email for like 5 minutes, right? And I was just sitting there, just minding my own business, right? And I turned back around, okay, and in the middle of my desk, on my bits, because I've been working on Skaven Doom wheels, right? Because they're awesome. Yeah, really, really good. And I'll tell you a little bit about that in a minute. But I got the bits laid out nicely. I'm filming the bits. And I turn around, and there's this little spider web hanging from the ceiling. I can see it through my light, right? I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Spider must have jumped off there. Kind of just gotten down, right? And I'm looking down, and I kind of, you turn into the light a little bit. You see the spider web reflect. And there's a black widow in the middle of my bits pile. And it has made a full-on black widow nest right in there. And I'm just like, okay, I guess that's where we're at. The lizards are gone. The spiders are in. Got the goosebumps going. The little hairs on the back of your neck start tingling. Because like earlier, I was walking back and forth between my areas, and I kind of felt something on the back of my head, and I wasn't sure what it was, and I had gloves with resin on them, so I couldn't check. And then that happened. So I killed it. I squirted it down with isopropyl alcohol, and then I kept working. Mm-hmm. I kept working because I don't know how else to get through that, but man, I'm having second thoughts about this place a little bit. I mean, it's nice, and that's the weird thing, but like, it's definitely still a garage. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, if that were me, I'd be, I'd be putting on my safety goggles and like hat,
right?
Putting on my oven mitts, and then I'd be getting some industrial silicone caulk and just going around with my caulk gun,
right?
Every corner, every edge, just all of it. Yep.
Yeah.
The baseboards, yeah.
Well, the weird thing is that the main room that I'm in, which is like it's a good size, like 2-car garage. It's got baseboards like a house. Mm-hmm. It's got carpet. Okay. It's the nice, like, industrial flat carpet, but it's carpet. And it looks fairly sealed. Like, I have a heater going and it stays warm in here, so it's insulated. But man, they just keep getting in. I'm not worried about the lizards anymore, but come summertime, like, is that going to be a problem? I don't know.
Well, you'll have to keep us updated, Casey.
Yeah.
I want to say a Black Widow is like a -2 on your hobby score.
It's much worse.
It's not good.
It's not good.
It's pretty extreme. It's pretty metal, but it's not.
I mean, it
good.
is kind of metal, which I do like. Yeah, but I don't know, man. Like, it's like the little things, right? These little things keep popping back up, and I got to do something. I got to do something. I got to proof this entire, I don't know, bug bomb the whole thing or set lizard traps or something. But that's where I'm at. Building Skaven Doom wheels. Yeah.
Cool.
Actually, yeah, that's I got this Doom wheel from a guy up in Canada, right? And the entire model was put together, and he's like, well, I used what I had because, I don't know, I didn't have any instructions. So it was basically put together like completely wrong. And all of it was super glued together. 100% of it. Oh, I'm sorry. Not super glue. That would actually be the right choice. Hot glue. It was hot glued together. Like the whole thing. So imagine a Doom wheel, right, with all the little intricate parts, the wheels and everything, if you've never seen one. And it's just hot glue. And that's it.
Is it a plastic or a metal Doom wheel?
It's a plastic one. So a lot of the plastic was warped pretty good, too. So it was a pretty funky looking Doom wheel. But I managed to get most of the glue off, pretty much all of it. And I ended up finding a 3D print file that, I'm not even kidding, is the best rip-off 3D print file I've ever seen for a Games Workshop model. This Doom wheel that I'm holding up is not real.
That's a 3D print?
This is a 3D print.
Ooh,
and it looks
okay, that is pretty nice.
Absolutely legit. And I'm like really wrestling over whether or not I should even share where it came from. Because it's like, you could look it up, right? Like, but it's so good.
Just know that it is out there. Know that, the holy grail of false Skaven Doom wheels is out there if you just care to look. You have to believe in yourself that you can Google up a Doom wheel. And if you see the one that's okay, you see one that's just okay, keep going. Keep going.
It gets deeper. But it's I don't know, like I've just never seen a 3D print that solid before. That's like, it amazes me that there are those ripoffs out there, because somebody had to take the time and effort to sculpt that to that degree, right? And in this case, it's like they didn't miss a beat. It looks exactly the same. Like the rats are a little bit different. They're like instead of like plague marine looking rats, they're kind of like storm vermin looking rats. So they just like changed out the type of rat, but it still looks like the GW rats. So I don't know, but I did keep the file. I have all the stuff because it also has one of the nicest like 3D printable flags, like a big banner flag that's just empty, so you can draw stuff on it, freehand, whatever you want. And they're like really hard to come by. The actual flag for this model on eBay and everything else, they're really expensive. Like I bought one a few years ago and it was like almost $20 for the stupid plastic flag.
What?
Yeah. So even just the flag portion has now saved me like $30 just building this kit back up. And of course I just printed out the entire model because it was too good. So that's that's what I've been working on. Yeah.
All right, that's a pretty good find right there, Casey. I'm happy for you.
I felt good about it. Felt weird about it, but good,
Once you get that painted all up, you just don't tell anybody. Go back and delete this episode.
We'll just delete that. We'll just cut that part out. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, so it's been an interesting week, the Black Widow thing, the Doom Wheel thing. I feel like this is going to be some never-ending, like, stupid, joke that's, like, not really a joke. Like, I'm just being invaded constantly.
Well, I'm wishing you the best of luck for you and your family for your continued health and well-being.
Yeah. Black Widows are no joke.
No, I don't think they... Yeah.
No, I mean, I assume you have them in Maine.
No? We don't have that in Maine. We have bears. That's it.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I don't know what the bear to human...
Moose?
Moose, yeah. Moose is pretty dangerous.
Car accidents involving deer? I don't know. Wildlife isn't
here.
Too bad.
Yeah, the deer thing. We've hit a deer here before. That's no good. Coyotes, too. Like, they just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, we got those. We got those. Okay. No black widows, certainly no lizards. I can tell you that right now. No scorpions. What?
Yeah, so far, okay. So, I haven't seen a scorpion in here yet. Maybe next summer, when it gets real hot.
We're going to have to seriously modify the hobby score rankings and really think of the negatives that might be infecting your work area. That's
actually, I like that. That's a good addition because I know a lot of people, especially like in England, right, have like backyard sheds, and that's their hobby space, and they're not fully contained, like they're not insulated and done up necessarily.
Oh, it gets cold in the shed.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, what, like Oliver from Broadsword Wargaming, like when he was starting out, he was in a pretty big shed. But like you could see light coming from underneath because the walls didn't go all the way down to the ground. So it's like it's literally a wooden shed. So yeah, I mean, I could see how like if wildlife is attracted to your semi-warm hobby room, like that is definitely a negative. Yeah, we'll have to update the document. It's almost time for another
something
iteration.
To look forward to.
Yeah.
Something to look forward to, dear listener.
Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah. Not much else is new on my end. I've been sick for more than a week here. I'd made it 3 years without getting sick of anything, and then I just got a bad cold and hacking up a lung, and but we're mostly better now, mostly.
Well, you sound good. That's good.
Yeah. Had man, I was just kind of getting out of bed every once in a while to see if my YouTube channel was still alive, and it turns out, YouTube decided to get everybody really interested in the science of how superglue works.
Yeah.
So a video I posted 3.5 years ago just suddenly got 300,000 views. Like, yeah. Took it 3.5 years to get 80,000 views, and then
like a week,
at least 250,000 in the last week. Just everyone's going nuts on superglue.
That's so insane.
Trying to figure this out. Let me know if you're on TikTok and there's like a TikTok challenge where 12-year-olds are eating superglue or something. I don't know. This is all related.
There's got to be some kind of catalyst, right? Something happened in the larger sphere, and people are like, I need a PhD scientist to tell me how this works. I need this right now.
And it's just an old Goobertown Hobbies video where it's not white balanced or anything. It's just me looking like an idiot. Like, let me tell you how superglue works. And then just a really long, rambling explanation of how superglue works. And then just, oh, this is a great video. This is great. Oh, man, this is just what I wanted. Like, well,
it's exactly what they needed.
Where were you 4 years ago? You know? Like,
well, that's why there has to be something, right? There has to be some reason, like, that superglue is now, like, this is a thing that we need to know about. And, like, they're looking for that scientific explanation, right? It's gotta be, man.
I was interested when I made that video. Nobody else was interested when I posted it. It's like, well, it's out there. I mean, somebody's eventually going to watch it. And I was right.
Yeah,
I was right,
you were
sort
right.
of.
Yeah. So you just playing the long game.
But then I got people complaining on the video like, yeah, this video was cool, but I was disappointed that your channel does other stuff. Like, well, if you watched this 3.5 years ago, maybe the channel could all be about the chemistry of glues, but you didn't.
Fair.
So here we are.
Yeah. It's 100% their fault. Like, it's been dictated. It's gone down a path. Yeah. We're on that path. Just gotta follow it.
So we're just riding that one out, seeing where that goes. But
it's still going, right?
It is. Yeah. It is. It's gotten many, many thousands of views today for people just trying to learn how that superglue works. They want the cyanoacrylate chemistry explained to them in great detail.
Great detail. With those little black and red balls.
I didn't even have a model kit in that one. I just I hacked into my old ChemDraw account and drew out the electron pushing mechanisms and the chemical structures and everything. It's an okay video. You go check it out if you don't know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I remember liking it 3.5 years ago.
Oh, good.
Whatever. I got it.
But yeah, there's no telling what's going to do well on YouTube, because the view chart of that is just like a flat line of just, getting 20 views a day, something like that. Yeah. And then it's just like, then for a week you're getting 40,000 views a day. It's just okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to predict these kinds of things, but I mean, that's a pretty nice, welcome thing to happen. And I mean,
it's not a bad thing. It's just a silly thing.
It is silly.
It's just silly. It makes me question how the world works.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with the advent of Gorilla Glue in your hair, like, I mean, people got to know these things.
There must have been some sort of cultural event recently involving superglue that started this, but I can't for the life of me think of what it would have been.
I mean, if anybody does know, like, legitimately, if there was something, like, definitely leave that in the comments, because I want to know what's going on.
Yeah. And my chemistry of 2-part epoxy videos, it's getting a few thousand views a day now.
Yeah, the people who came for the CA glue. They're staying for the epoxy.
I think it's all autoplay coming off of the super glue videos, but still,
could be
still a little trickle down chemistry video viewership. Yeah. So that's me.
That's not bad.
We each have our own stupid stories for what we've been up to. You ready to talk about paint, or you got any other stupid stories?
I don't think I wrote anything stupid down. The spider thing just happened, so that was kind of just on the top of my mind. We do have a couple of hot tips, though. I did want to lay down some hot tips. Because I've been getting out hot tipped by Brent like every week. He just comes in fresh with one and didn't mention it. So I thought I'd kind of do the same thing. One of these hot tips is, in fact, from a listener, subscriber, and one of them is my own. So I'm going to start with mine, then we'll get to the listener hot tip. Black construction paper in your hobby space is a necessary tool. I like it. It works really well. You can put it underneath your workspace, and it's easier to see your gray plastic. It's great for like a quick palette if you need it. You can kind of rinse your brush off and get that point, going just to get the right amount of paint on it. The construction paper kind of sucks up the water a little bit. So I like that for that. You can also use it as a dry brush tester. It's really good. It's right there in your workspace. Doesn't really matter that it's dry, So yeah, highly recommended. Black construction paper.
Okay. I mean, it seems like you do all of that with a white paper towel, but hey.
No, but see, the paper towel, it's like, if this was an infomercial, right, I'd be like, and then the paper towel would fly off because it's not, it's just a paper towel. It sits off to the side.
Let us know in the comments below if you think black construction paper in any way replaces a white paper towel.
It does.
Let us know. We'll set up a poll.
We'll set up a poll. See if
anyone knows what Casey is talking about here. Yeah.
Like if you're doing like glazing or something, it wicks off the excess moisture, and I don't have to hold the paper towel. It's already there. It's on my desk, right? It's laid down nice and flat. Just boom, done. Don't have to think about it.
That bounty wicking action. Yeah, okay. All right.
Come on now.
We give you a C+ on that hot tip of the day.
Yeah, all right.
What else you got? You said you had another one?
Yes, from a listener subscriber to the channel, Mr. Gary J. His hot tip he put down in the comments was gluing a piece of sprue to the end of the X-Acto knife barrel so it doesn't roll off the table and stab him in the foot. I like that. It's actually pretty good.
Better safe than sorry,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got like a tic-tac sized piece of sprue because obviously now everybody's cutting their sprues up and keeping them in a little box. So,
right.
Like, of course, you have an extra. That's perfect use for it. You just glue one on the end so it doesn't roll. I like it. It's good. I mean, because technically, like, what I use is a piece of foam, like some insulation foam. I just jab the thing right in there, and it's like a little block, right? And it doesn't go anywhere, but it's not permanent. I lost the piece. It's somewhere over here. I don't know where it is right now. So, I mean, that X-Acto knife could roll off the table and stab me in the foot. And, I mean, I don't always wear shoes.
Well, there's a use for all our sprues right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You could mail one piece of sprue to every person that listens to this podcast, and you'd still have that entire box.
They all have sprues.
I know. Yeah. But they don't have Goobertown sprues.
No, they don't. Look, you're going to think of this hot tip the next time you stab yourself in the foot with your roly-poly X-Acto blade.
It's possible.
I will think of this hot tip the next time I stab myself in the foot with my roly-poly X-Acto blade.
Yeah.
All right.
That's all I got for hot
tips that's really not that useful until it's suddenly useful. Right.
Yeah, it's one of those you think about it, you don't do it, and then you wish you had. I mean, I've had some close calls, like for real. Like, I set an X-Acto blade down, and it just rolls towards me, and it falls. And it's like, yeah, the end hit my foot. Good thing it wasn't the sharp end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I can see that.
You know what, Casey? Next week I'll try to do the hot tips of the week next week. Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. We'll see what happens. See if you remember any hot tips. You got any new good ones?
If I develop any hot tips.
If you develop them over the next week. Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about paints, Casey.
Paints. Yeah. Specifically, like, why do we own so many paints, and how many different paints do you actually need? Those kinds of questions. Because as miniature painters, we tend to hoard things like sprues and bits of sprues and paint, right? Like, I have probably as much paint. Well, okay, that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but I have a lot of paint, not necessarily compared to the amount of models I have, but it's not far off either. Like, I have a lot of paint. So, like, why? Why do we do that? Why is it that we go around and we're just like, you know what? I've never tried Pro Acryl. I'm going to buy a set of that. Or, you know, like, everybody starts off, they go to their hobby shop and they buy like 40 army painter paints, or they get the 300 mega kit, right? Like, even if you don't know if you like it, you just buy. Almost every time I go into a hobby store, I buy paint, even if I don't necessarily need it. Just like, I'm here, might as well, because I might need a third bottle of that, you know, purplish brown that I like so much.
Well, before we forget about it, that is one reason to buy paint. If you're at the hobby store and you're like, well, I'd like this hobby store to be here the next time I want to go there, I should probably buy some paint again.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Paint is the perfect, I walked into this hobby store, I should probably buy something before I walk out. It is the perfect filler for making, you know, checking that box, making sure you buy something before you walk out the door.
Right.
So just before we forget about it, it fills that role very nicely.
That's true. And I mean, I do think about that when I go in. I'm like, well, at least I am here. I'm gonna pick up something, right?
Yeah, if they got any old style Nuln Oil, I'll pick that up.
Did they change Nuln Oil? I keep hearing
Pretty sure they did. There was a like a wave of videos about them changing Nuln Oil a few months back.
Really?
They put it in a smaller bottle and also changed the formula a little bit.
Oh, that is highly disappointing.
Casey stops recording and gets in his van and goes, and all the local hobby shops trying to stock up on the.
I'm honestly thinking about it.
Trying to stock up on that Nuln Oil.
Like, I've got, I don't know, like,
do it tomorrow, Casey. Do it tomorrow. We're recording here. The viewers need.
I'm getting anxious now. Like, it's all going to be sold. It's like when they did that with the what are those? The glazes. They're just like, oh, nobody buys these. They're not useful. And now you can buy a bottle of unopened, like, yellow glaze for $40 on eBay because they're the best.
Casey buys a lot of paints because FOMO.
It's a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, fear of missing out on those old style paints. They're never going to make those paints again. Nobody is ever going to make a paint that good again.
So far,
yeah.
Well, it just happened that I bought the entire line of Pro Acryl and it got here today.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that was actually probably a good move.
I mean, and there are reasons for that, and we can get into it a little bit. It's not technically my favorite paint, but it is a very, very good paint. Therefore, I would like more of it.
There you go.
Yeah. So generally, like, when I paint, I use everything from every brand. Like, I will pick out, okay, I like this specific white. I like that brown. I like this orangey brown for that, you know, highlight or whatever. Like, they're just combinations that I've come up with. But because I moved, right, I was pretty limited on paint over the last basically month that I've been in this garage. And my Pro Acryl set was set aside just because it was a set, right? So I had it set aside and I was using it pretty much exclusively without anything else, and just kind of thinking, like, man, like, why do I have all these other paints? Why am I, like, making my life difficult by having all of these different combinations? Like, does that make me a better painter, or am I just making excuses? And I think when it comes down to it, it's kind of just excuses. Like, there are certain paints that do certain things better. But generally speaking, if you're just painting a model to like play a game with or something, there's not really any good reason, I think, to mix and match a whole bunch of different paint ranges. I just think it's weird that we do that.
Depends. I mean, different lines do have their strengths and weaknesses. On the whole, though, most hobby paints will work for most purposes, and there's something to be said for just grabbing whatever is in arm's reach at your hobby desk there and using that.
Yeah.
And so, given that fact, there is the question of why do some people tend to accumulate multiple lines of paint? And when I say lines of paint, for some people, that's just going out and buying the whole line of paint. But for other people, that's like your hobby store has a couple of different lines of paint, and each time you go there, you buy a couple of bottles, and you've got 10 bottles of one brand and 15 bottles of another, and I think that counts as having a couple of lines of paint. That's fair. That's fine.
Yeah, sure. Like a good selection of different brands to get a feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for this, we're not just talking about people who spend $200 to get this line and $300 to get all of that line and, you know, another $200 to buy another line. We're not just talking to those people. When we're talking of accumulating too many paints, too many lines of paints, we can also be talking about the people who are doing it in a reasonable piecemeal way that, you know, they turn around and look at their desk and all of a sudden, wow, I've got a lot of duplicates of dark browns and bright greens or what have you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to introduce a theory that I have on why we accumulate different lines of paint and why we end up with 3 different bright greens from 3 different brands or what have you. So I have a theory that, as for hobbies especially, but for a lot of things in life, part of the learning curve involves purchasing to experience. Okay, so as one example, I have in front of me a fairly nice mechanical keyboard. At one point in my life, I was very into computer games and building my own computers, and I was reading all the forums about keyboards. And, you know, sure, you can get a $10 Dell keyboard or a free Dell keyboard, and it'll work perfectly fine for millions of keystrokes, and you never need another keyboard.
Yeah.
But now listen up.
It's clicky. I like it. Sounds good. Makes me
you
feel
hear
good.
That?
Mm-hmm.
That's a Cherry MX Blue mechanical key switch.
Oh man.
And now we're gonna do this again. It feels good. It sounds good. So anyway, like I went through a phase in my life where I'm like, like looking at the different types of key switches and like, oh, this one's got a click to it. Oh, this one's silent. Oh, this has a smooth operation. Oh, you got to put a couple more grams of pressure on this one. And so there are some things where if you're getting into a hobby, there are some things that you need to, you know, pay to experience essentially. Mm-hmm. And so I was at a phase where like, oh man, I want to try this kind of keyboard. And so you go out and buy a keyboard, mm-hmm. and it's not just the materialistic greed. What I was paying for was the experience, the learning process of feeling and understanding what people were talking about.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in that particular example, I didn't live next to a good electronics store where I could just go in and try all the different keys.
Right, where they're sitting out.
In my example, it was pretty much you mail order a keyboard with your Cherry MX Reds or whatever.
Yeah.
But take underwear, Casey.
This is a good example. Yes.
You know, as a child, your parents buy you certain types of underwears, and then as you mature, you start to buy your own underwears.
Whitey's, gotcha.
Yeah, and then you're going through Fruit of the Loom.
Oh yeah.
You got your Hanes. Mm-hmm. You got your, well, those are the big two. But you're trying out the different styles, the different materials, and eventually it's the Hanes, boxer brief premiums is the good ones. But you don't know that until you buy a lot of multi-packs of underwear, Casey.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel you, because I myself have landed on the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's weird.
And no matter how many Reddit forums you read about what's your favorite kind of underwear, there's some things that it's a tactile feel, it's a personal thing, and underwear has a lot in common with paint in this way. In that,
multicolored,
people on the internet are being like, the coverage on this is really good. It feels smooth. It's vibrant.
Yeah.
Or it's got the right springiness to it, or whatever
that is
it
important,
is.
Right? It's got to hug the leg just right. Can't ride up.
Well, I'm talking about paint. I'm talking about paint now, Casey.
Oh, well. See, I hate it. Even on those Hanes, though, the little bar at the top, the little strap that goes around your waist, the little stretchy band. Sometimes those things are floppy, and they flop. They don't just sit.
Right. Now this is you haven't entirely settled then. You're still thinking, you're still shopping.
Well, so not too long ago, I did find that there's a thicker band that they make. This is not even a joke, too. That's how stupid this is. And I only buy those now because they're specific. I also need the multicolored pack. Because I wear pants like jeans with like a lot of holes in them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no. See, I'd probably be wise to get like a single color, but since like generally down, just above my knees where they kind of sit, I got some holes in my jeans. Like most of my jeans are just ripped, and the holes keep getting bigger. So like you can see color poking out. Like I tried to match my underwear showing through the holes for family pictures the other day to my wife's shirt. She didn't think that was funny. So I had to change my pants, but yeah, paint though,
right,
a little different, but kind of the same.
Okay, so you buy your first couple of paints, and you're like, okay, these are okay. I'm painting. Some of my models are looking good. Some of them are not looking so good.
Yeah.
Are these the best paints? Are the reason my models are not looking good is because I got crappy paints? Are these even good paints? And then you see somebody online being like, oh, you got to get those Reaper MSPs. You got to get those. You got to get those scale 75s. So all what you need is the Monument Hobbies. You start being like. What is the range of experiences like for paints? And so it's that question of like, I want to learn more about this hobby. I want to understand what other people are talking about. I want to know if there actually are paints that are a better fit for me and how I like to do things, or paints that feel better, or paints that, look better on the type of models that I do, whether that's coverage or vibrancy or what have you. And so I think that a very logical progression of being curious about the hobby, wanting to learn about the hobby, is wanting to try new things. And unless you have a friend with a lot of different paints and is willing to let you play around with them, that just goes straight from wanting to learn to wanting to purchase new bottles of paint.
That's true. Yeah, like, I think seeing the end result that somebody else gets with a paint, you want to obviously, like, get better and replicate certain results. Like, if somebody's a really good painter, you're like, wow, that's like, well, this paint has, like, a really matte finish to it, right? Like, it looks a little bit different. There's no shine there. So then, scale 75, that's where the people, they paint these, display pieces. You got to get that, right? There's a lot of that for sure. And it is like trying different things out and finding what works for your style. I think that's pretty important because
there is.
You evolve over time, but like there are certain things that you end up liking about certain ways that you paint that dictate the types of products that you end up using.
Right. I do think there's a point where you kind of get over the learning curve. Once you've tried 3 or 4 different brands of paint, you can kind of see like what the boundaries are of the differences between paints. Like to a point, they're all paint. To a point, they behave kind of the same.
Yeah.
Like you can get an idea of how much better it's possible to be, sort of, where the edges are. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, no brand is going to be, 50% better than any of these ones that I have already.
Pretty much,
and you get to the point where you're like, okay, even if there's some new brand on the market, it's going to be like, 5% better than my favorite orange,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever the color is.
I do have a favorite orange that just feels better.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people reach a point where they're like, okay, I understand what water-based acrylic paint is and the kind of possible range of attributes that it can have. And I think, we went to Gamma. We saw Duncan Rhodes's paints.
Mm-hmm.
And we were both curious about them because we'd heard people talking about them. But at the same time, we're like, okay, it's a range of acrylic paints. We pretty much know what this is going to be. And we can kind of think about where this fits in compared to other stuff we've tried. And we liked them, but it wasn't like crazy in any direction from other stuff that we were familiar with. Like it wasn't.
Yeah.
It was in no way shocking. We knew what we were getting in for, and we're like, okay, this is what this is. This makes sense. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Not bad at all. But yeah. There's a point where, a new line of acrylic paint coming to the market, you can guess what it's going to be. It could be worse than what you're expecting, but
that's true. That is very true.
Can always be worse.
It can always be worse. Yeah. There's a reason that you start off with the boxer briefs, or I shouldn't say that. Just the briefs, right? Your tiny white. It's just like your apple barrel paints. And then you graduate because it just doesn't work as well.
Man, I went through a lot of packs of multi-packs of t-shirts before I figured out that you want the tri-blend. The tri-blend.
Okay,
that's cotton, polyester, nylon in a 33 tri-blend.
Yeah.
It's soft. It doesn't do the Gildan cotton thing where it all curls up.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you try some stuff out, and then you get to the point where you've learned enough about a topic to know what you're going in for. Okay, so in terms of accumulating paints, there are things that are outside of the range of water-based acrylic paints.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, Reaper MSP, Scale 75, Monument Hobbies, Citadel, Vallejo. Like, to a point, they're all in the same category. There's differences between them. There's personal preference. But to a point, if you've got, like, some representatives of a couple of those ranges, and you got a couple of options for each color, you're fine. At a certain point, you can chill out and stop buying like acrylic paints. Yeah.
Well, there's like a weird curve that comes with that too. Like if I see a new paint, or I've like, I'll see, my store has these Scale 75 like game colors now. Right? That's a new thing. I haven't tried those,
Yes, that's where we're going. Where we're going. Exactly.
So I start picking those up, though. And then after I've tried 5 or 6 of them, I spent, a good amount of money. I'm kind of like, am I going to find the breakthrough if I buy one more bottle? Probably not. And then I stopped buying that paint.
So those are Scale 70. You said war colors? What did you say they were?
The what is it? Fantasy something. It's Scale 75. Okay. It's just their fantasy. But you're talking about
their acrylic paints.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what Scale 75 also has instant colors? Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah.
So that's their contrast line.
Okay. So we get to a point where there is a product that is substantially different that you want to give a shot.
Yeah.
So contrast, speed paint, instant colors from Scale 75, dipping inks, whatever the Vallejo Express or whatever is called.
That's a left field call. I would have thought for sure they would have come up with something better than that, but that's a weird, okay, dipping inks, all right.
Dipping inks. So, yeah, that gets into a new type of paint product. This does something different than your regular old paints. I want to experience that. I'm curious about that. And so you go out and you buy some contrast paints or whatever. And in that category, that is actually a very slippery slope, because in those, inks, contrast paints, speed paints, whatever, the bottle looks nothing like what it looks like when you're actually using it and putting it on a model.
That's true. That's very true.
So in terms of paying to learn something, paying for the experience, paying to level up your brain.
Yeah.
Man, that's one where it's real easy to just kind of find yourself buying the whole range. And
yeah,
I certainly did that with the Secret Weapon washes, the colored washes that Secret Weapon had.
I had to stop myself.
I couldn't stop myself. I got through the whole range.
Wow.
I probably, did 3 or 4 trips to my local store of, I bought 4 or 5 washes the first time, a couple of the other, and like 4 trips to the store. And finally I just went online and bought the whole rest of the set of colors from, Secret Weapon washes.
Man.
And I mean, that's a tricky situation, because you can't just look at the bottle and know what it's going to do.
Yeah.
Not only, the color looks different than it does in the like dark liquid in the bottle, but also because the pigments are all kind of act different. I mean, some of them turn out darker than you think they're going to be, or kind of just barely stain things. And there's different degrees of how hard that hits when you're washing the model. So, man, that's a tough one. It is very easy for the washes and the contrast paints, speed paints to accidentally buy a whole set.
Yeah.
Given time, at least. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, and I started down the path not too long ago with kind of a similar thing. I was looking into the Army Painter air paints. And that's kind of the same type of a thing where you look at it and it's like, okay, well, it's air. I don't have to mix this up, right? I'm saving a step. And I started buying them, and it's like, oh, I want to test this color out. I'm going to test that color. I had to, again.
Did you really?
Yeah, and I had to stop myself. Just be like, this is stupid. Like, I don't need to do this.
I think airbrush paints should be pretty easy to stop yourself on, because you do pretty much know what the color is going to be. A lot of times it's pretty closely matched to one of their normal paints.
Sure.
A lot of times you can just use the normal paint and
you'd think
thin it down or not and just put it through the airbrush. Yeah.
I did the same thing with Vallejo Game Air. And that range is super hit and miss. Mm-hmm. Some of the colors, nice pigmentation, goes on just like you would think it would. You mix up the bottle, you see the color. Okay, cool. That's the color that went down. It didn't take much. Not a thick layer of paint as intended through an airbrush. But there are some colors that you really have to do several passes with in order to saturate it enough to get the color that's in the bottle. So that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, man, like, is this going to be like that? And so far, thankfully, what's in the bottle has been what comes out of the airbrush. And that's different. That's actually a huge improvement for just an airbrush ready paint, in my experience. So that's why I was on that track. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. So I think there is a category of why do we buy so many paints that are like actually direct upgrades from something you have. Mm-hmm. So we've been talking a little bit about side grades, Vallejo versus Citadel for just their paints. Like that's a side grade. That's what kind of bottle you want your paint to come out of. But there are situations where, if you're telling me that the Vallejo Game Color Air is not good, that replacing that with a different line actually is an upgrade in a lot of cases. Cool. That makes sense. Yeah. One of the examples I was thinking of is for priming through an airbrush. The Vallejo has a lot of different colors of surface primer that are the exact same bottle design as Stynylrez or Monument Hobbies primer bottles. and they behave very differently. Like if you,
they're nice.
If you went out and you bought a couple of different colors of primer from Vallejo Surface Primer, and you're tired of your paintbrush getting jammed up after 90 seconds of use, then you absolutely, like, I'm telling you, it is okay and actually probably a good thing to go out and buy. And I've been having really good luck with the Monument Hobbies primer.
Nice.
And most of the time I have good luck with the Stynylrez, the Badger Stynylrez primer too. I've had a couple of bad bottles from Stynylrez, but
I have too. 90% though, for sure.
Yeah. And not crapping on Vallejo at all. Like if you're having a hard time with metallics, go out and buy some Vallejo metallic paints.
Yeah.
Like that's a good choice. Yeah.
I mean, I think overall, like, Vallejo makes a really good product. Their primer paints on a little bit better, that particular primer, with a brush than it does through an airbrush, because it will clog your airbrush like very fast. Yeah. But I've definitely used a lot of both of those primers. Like, I did end up making the switch to Badger because of clogs, and then being told, like, well, yeah, it's because this doesn't clog and that will. And go figure, that's exactly what happened. I mean, obviously, like, a lot of word of mouth and watching YouTube videos, right, is going to get you to want to buy more paints. Because, like, I don't know. I mean, I think people were using inks back in the day, right? Even Games Workshop sold inks. And then it kind of, like, phased out, right? I don't remember a lot of ink usage, like, in the early 2000s. And not even that far after, like, inks were just back in. Everybody's got an ink, right? Or something similar. And now, like, I almost never paint tomato without it. I use inks all the time.
Well, depending on where you're drawing the line between inks and washes and what have you.
Sure. Yep. Oh, I do mean, like, actual, like, you could put it in a pen ink, right? Okay. Like, you know, like a Liquitex ink. Yeah, because I haven't tried, like, and it's another thing, right? Like, I've heard people go, oh, you know, those alcohol inks, gotta get some of those. Like, God, like, do I? The answer is probably no, but I will.
So I think we're pretty standard in this, in that we'll try, like, a couple of brands of side grades just to get a feel for what's out there. So, you know, a couple of brands of acrylic paints, and then, gotta try a couple of brands of inks. You got contrast paint. Now you gotta try speed paint. And so like I think I've gotten to the point where, like, I've tried contrast paint, I've tried speed paint. I am curious, but not as curious about, you know, Vallejo Express and the war paint, or the instant colors from Scale 75 and the dipping inks from Green Stuff World, because it's like, okay, I think this is all kind of in the same class. I don't need to try absolutely everything from this class. I've got some things that behave probably similarly. And eventually, out of curiosity and to learn and to get that experience, I probably will pick up a couple of bottles from all of those. But it's not the same burning desire as the first time that I saw Secret Weapon colored washes. not that at all. It's like, okay, I've got a guess as to what this stuff is, and I'm sure there's some finer points and some individual bottles that are winners and losers out of these lines. But so let's say that we get into this habit of getting, like, 2 side grades from each category. Okay. You got acrylic paints. You've got kind of the thick colored washes, whatever you want to call those. We've got oil paints. You've got airbrush paints, airbrush primers, and there's inks. You know, there's enough categories of stuff that if you get, you know, even if you're just doing one main line and then, like, a couple little bottles from a competitor brand, that adds up. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. And And even if you realize that your style is, I just use acrylic paints, I don't even care about oils and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
You still got all those bottles in your basement, so.
Yeah. Well, as long as the cap's on, they're not going to go bad, probably.
Well, you know, maybe.
It depends on the brand.
Depends on the brand.
Yeah. Oh, man. I think just to kind of answer the question of why do we own so many paints, I think on my personal journey, and I do think that this does apply to mostly everybody, I think it's chasing the idea that there is a product that just does a thing better and it will make you a better painter.
Mm-hmm.
So I have tried all the things, and I use oils and I use inks and I use enamels and all of it, right? And somehow there's a magical combination that will make my models look better. Now, in my head, I don't think that's really true. I think it is whatever's closest to you is the right paint for you.
For
Literally,
the most part.
like proximity on your desk. If I see a green, that's probably good. Probably going to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's, you know, the ideal blue paint is a score of 100, A+, the ideal perfect blue paint for you. And I think the majority of blue paints on the market are somewhere between an 85 and a 90 on that scale. And if you keep buying blue paints, you'll find a 92 percentile out there, and good for you. But yeah, part of that learning curve is buying a couple of bottles of blue paint and like, hey, this one's an 85% and this one's an 87%, and
that's a good way to look at it.
This one's an 88%, but you kind of learn like what the range of what paint is, what it can do, what the limits are, and eventually you stop buying blue paint because you realize you're chasing after a dream.
That's true.
It's not real. Yeah.
Oh man, that's a good point. I do look at it like that for specific colors, right? For like yellow, for orange, and for blue. Like those are the tough colors, right? Like, how good is this orange? How good does it look if I highlight with it, or it's over red, or does it coat in like one or two coats? You know, like probably not. Yellow doesn't do that. Orange doesn't do that. Like white is the biggest culprit, right? Like, is it gonna chalk up? Is it gonna start getting clumpy? Like, white is so terrible, which is why, you know, a lot of people switched over to like white ink.
Yeah, the range on whites is like from 45% up to like 80%.
Yeah, I like that though. It's good. It's like a scoring system for paints. It's like, no, this is definitely in that, you know, the top percentile, right? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I like it.
But you buy a few brands and you realize, like, okay, like this is about as good as it gets. This is my favorite white. This is my favorite purple, whatever. But you get a sense. But yeah, and again, unless you have some really good friends who are willing to loan you paints and let you play around with their paint sets in order to get that experience and that understanding, a lot of times it does involve purchasing a sample of paints for yourself and learning those things, and then having those bottles sitting around your hobby zone forever.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, like that you have a million brands of paint. Like, you're going to eventually figure out what works best for you and for the application, right? Like, you're just going to figure it out because you're going to use it enough times.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I figured out that Toxic Green from Scale 75 highlights over literally any other brand of green the best. And that's just what it is.
So there's that whole other level of things of like, if you do want to get your perfect color wheel, and your perfect color wheel is like, picking and choosing the absolute best selections from 7 different brands of paint. I mean, yeah, you can chase that dragon if you want. Go for it. That's
it's a big dragon.
Yeah. That's the dream right there.
The dream.
And I do have listed on my notes here, some people have an unhealthy compulsion. If they hear there's a new line of paints out, get that line, figure out what the winners are in that line. And hopefully you get something that's an upgrade from your current setup.
Well, like I'm waiting for a set of Chimera paints in the mail.
And that's Chimera is an interesting thing because it is gimmick isn't quite the right word, but it's a different category. Chimera goes on the because they're trying to be more artistic. Smaller range of pure single pigment paints. That's made with an emphasis on mixing and vibrancy and all that stuff.
They are bright.
And so maybe if you do have paints from a line that has 90 different colors, maybe you want Chimera that has, I don't know, it has 20 different colors.
Yeah, it's not very many. Yeah.
And I can certainly see why people end up with, even if you're smart and you only buy one paint line and you're like, okay, I've got Citadel for my normal acrylics. I've got my Dollar Rowney inks. I've got, I'm going speed paints for my colored washes. I don't know.
Yeah.
But even so, there's all these categories, and if you are experimenting and learning and spending money to do that learning, you're still gonna end up with a whole bunch of little bottles hanging around your hobby area.
That's true.
And look, we're coming kind of close to the end of the year here, and so there's this other element of you've been really good this year, and you deserve it.
Yeah.
You've earned it.
Yeah. Just a few more bottles.
Nobody else is going to buy you a new line of paints.
See.
You've got to do that.
On Amazon, Vallejo sells their like pre-packed, like, oh, this is for painting wood. This is for painting metal. This is for whatever. They have those packs on there, and they're only like $30. So yeah, 100%. Like, put those on your wish list, because that's how I got on mine. Like, people just bought them. They were on my wish list. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
It's 100% do that.
That's how you get more paints right there.
Yeah. If you don't have to buy them, then it's definitely worth it. The weird thing is, though, like, I've unpacked those kits and I forgot how they go together, so I just kind of pulled the same things. It's like, oh, well, that's a skin tone. The only actual pack that I've ever gotten, and it was the same way, that I still use, is the Scale 75, like, how to paint skin. Because there are the combination that they included in that box is like, you can paint any kind of skin, and they have the like proper shading for that you can do, and it makes it easier. Like, I always grab the same, like, okay, I'm painting, Caucasian skin, I'm grabbing this particular bottle to shade that skin because it just has the look that I want. That's like the only set that I still actually maintain. It's sitting in order, like, on my shelf. Yeah. Otherwise, it's like, that color is, that's the skin color today for that particular guy.
It's all mixed up otherwise.
Yeah, it is literally whatever's closest. Like, if I want that skin tone, then whichever one I can reach at the time, because I'm also holding an airbrush that's attached to a line or whatever the case is, Yeah. That's where I'm at. I know, but that's, again, why I ended up getting the Pro Acryl, the set, because since I've been using it and it's been right there, I figured, well, if I have more of that and it's still right there, then I'll probably grab it, and that seems pretty good.
Yeah.
So I bought it.
They're getting into more and more local stores.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
None of mine, but
mine either. But I'm hearing things. I'm hearing things. So
yeah, they're getting around.
They're expanding. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
real good thing.
It is good. I enjoy their paint. Like it does work.
Yeah. I mean, as always, I recommend that you use the paint closest to you, and that if if you need to buy some new bottles of paint, do it from the store closest to you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is a really important consideration of what is available locally for when the urge hits, for when the need hits.
Yeah. Well, and like, if you know that they carry a certain line, then you can just kind of like dabble a little bit here and there. Give yourself an excuse to go to the hobby shop, right? My one of the hobby shops that I go to pretty frequently, they started selling used miniatures. Like they're buying and selling models now. So I have an even better excuse to be like, I could buy a new bottle of paint and see what they've got, It's like it's making it easier for me to get down there. And the more ranges that they put in the store, it's like even more, I could go down, I could use that like random Reaper paint that I probably don't need, but I've never tried. Yeah. Like I was buying Reaper paints for a while there. I got nice bottles.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Reaper is the one where I actually have several of their triads, but just for no fault of theirs, they've just kind of gotten pushed off of my hobby desk, and they're not the closest thing to me most of the time. But
yeah, man, I was using them for like a lot of stuff for a while, like especially early on, like coming back to painting. It was like, look how big these bottles are. I'm never gonna run out. And they're just right in front of me, so I was using them constantly. And then like like Menoth White and Menoth White Highlight were like my go-tos. And I haven't used those in like 3 years.
I gotta cycle them back in, man. But Pro Acryls first. Yeah.
Well, now that I got all those new colors, I gotta
I know,
put them on that scale, right?
Well, hopefully next time you'll be able to report back and let us know how you're liking that bright jade and that plum. There's some
that
good
bright
colors in
jade
there.
threw me over the edge, by the way. I saw that and I'm like, jeez, like I gotta get it. Yeah, it's too much for me.
Yeah. Well, on that note,
I'm gonna have to start talking about the pool table again. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of Paint Bravely. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and sharing this message with your hobby friends. And as always, we appreciate each and every one of you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
Talk to you next time.